He thought walking away was the easiest choice. No messy emotions, no promises, no responsibilities, just ambition. That night, when she stood in the rain with tears streaming down her face, begging him to stay, the millionaire CEO had turned his back. For years, he believed he'd buried the memory, but fate never forgets. One ordinary morning, his carefully built world shattered when he heard a voice, small, trembling, but powerful enough to pierce through every defense he had. "Daddy, are you coming with us?" Two children with the same eyes he saw in the mirror were staring at him, holding on to the very woman he once left behind. He froze. The ruthless CEO, who never missed a deal, suddenly couldn't find his voice. Because this wasn't a negotiation. This was truth, undeniable, raw, and waiting to break him. Nicholas Carter had never been the kind of man to hesitate. Deals worth millions were signed with the flick of his pen. Entire companies collapsed or thrived based on a single decision from him. His board called him fearless. The media called him ruthless. And to the world, he wore that image like an armor and always in control. But there was one night he could never completely erase. It had been raining that evening hard, relentless sheets of water crashing against the pavement as though the sky itself was grieving. She stood outside his car, her hair plastered to her face, tears mixing with the raindrops. Her voice cracked as she whispered the one thing he didn't want to hear. "Don't go, Nicholas, please. We can make this work." He had tightened his grip on the steering wheel, forcing his jaw to stay firm. Ambition was louder than her voice. The opportunity waiting for him, the deal overseas. The chance to build his empire felt too big to risk for love. He told himself she would understand one day, that she'd move on, that leaving was the only choice. And so, he walked away from her tears. He didn't look back, not even once. 5 years later, Nicholas's life had become exactly what he had dreamed. His penthouse touched the skyline. His name was on the cover of business magazines. Employees bowed their heads when he entered the room. To the world, he was success itself. But deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, a silence followed him, a silence that even the loudest parties and biggest deals couldn't drown. That silence was broken one morning in the most unexpected way. Nicholas had left an early shareholders meeting and decided to cut through a local community center's parking lot, a place he had never been before. He hated detours, but that day, fate chose for him. He stopped when he heard a small voice, a trembling voice, sharp enough to pierce through the noise of his phone buzzing. "Daddy, are you coming with us?" The phone slipped from his hand. His heart slammed against his ribs. Two children stood just a few steps away. A little boy, no older than 5, with dark eyes too familiar to mistake. Beside him, a smaller girl clutched his sleeve, her soft curls wet with the drizzle that had just started. They stared at him with the kind of expectation that rooted him to the ground. Nicholas's throat closed. He had faced hostile boardrooms, billion-dollar losses, and enemies who would have gladly destroyed him. But nothing had ever shaken him like this. His voice cracked, something it never did. "Who are you?" Before either child could answer, a woman appeared, her face pale, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Yet burning with a fire he remembered all too well. It was her. The woman he had left crying in the rain 5 years ago. The one he thought he'd never see again. Ember. Her name echoed in his head like a ghost. Returning to claim him, she froze when their eyes met. And in that still moment, the truth hit him harder than any deal gone wrong. The boy's eyes, the girl's smile. Their features weren't random. They weren't coincidence. They were his. Nicholas staggered a step back, as if the ground had betrayed him. 5 years ago, he thought he had walked away from a woman's tears. But now he saw what he had really abandoned. Not just her, but them. Amber pulled the children close, her arms circling them protectively. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no words came. Nicholas could barely breathe, his chest heaving as though every carefully constructed wall of his empire had crumbled in seconds. The boy looked up again, his voice small but certain. "You really are our daddy, right?" Nicholas felt his world tilt. For the first time in years, he had no answer, no strategy, no control, only a hollow ache growing inside his chest, demanding the truth he could no longer run from. Nicholas Carter had faced hostile shareholders, ruthless competitors, and the kind of scandals that would have crushed any other CEO. He had survived them all because he knew how to control a room, how to hold power in his voice, how to never let emotions dictate his decisions. But standing in front of Amber and the two children clinging to her hands, Nicholas felt powerless. Amber. The name slipped out of his mouth before he could stop it. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. Her eyes hardened. "Don't." One word, That was all it took to cut him down more sharply than any business rival ever had. She stood straighter, pulling the children closer, her protective stance telling him everything he hadn't wanted to admit, that he was a stranger here. Nicholas swallowed, his throat dry. They're mine, aren't they? Amber's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Instead, the little girl peeked at him from behind her mother's coat. His eyes held the kind of innocent curiosity that shattered every excuse he'd once made. Nicholas crouched instinctively, lowering himself so he wasn't towering over them. His voice softened in a way he hadn't heard in years. "Hi," he whispered. Though his hands shook, the boy tilted his head, studying him. "Mommy said we didn't have a daddy, but you look like me." The words hit Nicholas like a blow. His chest burned, 1,000 unspoken apologies caught in his throat. He looked up at Amber, desperate, but her face gave nothing away. Amber finally spoke. Her voice calm but sharp enough to wound. "What do you want, Nicholas? To play the hero for a day and disappear again? Because I won't let you hurt them." Her words dragged the air from his lungs. "I didn't know," he said quickly, his voice breaking. "Amber, I swear, I didn't know." "You didn't care to know," she snapped, her tone trembling now, anger and exhaustion fighting to break through. "The night I begged you to stay, you chose ambition. You didn't even look back." The children's hands tightened on hers. Nicholas could see the weight of those years carved into her face, dark circles beneath her eyes. The way her shoulders curved as though she'd been carrying the world alone. And suddenly, the glossy headlines calling him ruthless and fearless felt like lies. Because here, he wasn't powerful, he was guilty. Nicholas took a shaky step closer. "Let me try, Amber, please. Let me at least explain." Her laugh was bitter, nothing like the bright sound he remembered. "Explain? What's left to explain, Nicholas? That I raised them alone while you built your empire. That they asked every night why they didn't have a daddy. That I worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table while you were living in Penn." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Because Nicholas could picture its twins sitting at a worn-out kitchen table. Amber hiding her exhaustion behind a forced smile. He had missed their first steps, their first words, every scraped knee, every bedtime story. Those memories were gone, and nothing could give them back. "I can't change the past," Nicholas admitted, his voice low and hoarse. "But let me be here now. Let me prove I won't walk away again." Amber's eyes searched his face, but there was no trust left in them. "Words," she whispered bitterly. "That's all you've ever had, Nicholas. Words and promises that never meant anything." Before Nicholas could reply, the little girl tugged on Amber's sleeve. "Mommy, can he come with us?" Amber froze. The boy looked up too, his small hand tightening around hers. Nicholas's heart shattered at the hope in their voices. They didn't know his failures, his choices. All they knew was the possibility of a father. Amber's lips trembled, torn between shielding them and denying what was already written in their eyes. She finally sighed, shoulders heavy. "Not today," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "We're going home." The children looked disappointed, but they didn't argue. Amber turned to walk away, pulling them with her. Nicholas's instincts screamed at him to follow, but for once, he didn't rush in. He stood rooted to the ground, rain dampening his expensive suit, as he watched the family that should have been his disappear into the distance. For the first time in his life, Nicholas Carter felt the one thing he had never allowed himself before: regret, and with it, a burning resolve he would not let this be the end. The rain that evening hadn't stopped, but neither had Nicholas's thoughts. He sat in his penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city he had conquered. Yet the view, once intoxicating, now looked hollow. Towers of glass and steel, contracts worth billions. Headlines calling him the Titan of Wall Street. None of it filled the silence in his chest. He saw their faces instead. Amber's eyes, tired but strong. The boy's quiet courage. The little girl's innocent hope. For years, Nicholas believed regret was weakness, but now, regret was the only thing keeping him awake. And for the first time in his life, Nicholas Carter, ruthless, unshakable CEO, realized that money and power meant nothing if he couldn't answer the most innocent question: "Daddy, are you coming with us?" The very next day, Nicholas made a decision no one in his empire understood. He cleared his schedule. Meetings worth millions were postponed. Deals others would have killed for were pushed aside. His assistant panicked. His board demanded explanations. But Nicholas ignored them all. He only had one priority now: Amber, and the children he never knew. Finding them wasn't hard, his resources made sure of that. But approaching them was another matter. For days, he lingered at the edges of their world, quietly watching. He saw Amber juggling groceries with one hand and a toddler's backpack with the other. He saw the boy practicing soccer with shoes too worn to grip the field properly. He saw the little girl clutching a stuffed bear at night through their apartment window, whispering goodnight to a father she didn't know. Nicholas's chest ached. Every glimpse was a reminder of what he had lost, of the years he could never reclaim, but it was also a vow. He would not lose the years ahead. The first step was small. One evening, he appeared at the community center again, this time with a soccer ball under his arm. The boy froze when he saw him, cautious, uncertain. Nicholas knelt down, his heart pounding. "I don't know if I'm any good," Nicholas admitted, forcing a smile, "but I thought maybe we could kick this around together." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, the boy nodded, and when his foot connected with the ball, sending it clumsily toward Nicholas, something inside the CEO cracked open. The sound of the boy's laugh, unguarded, was more valuable than any fortune he had ever made. Winning Amber's trust was harder. She watched every interaction with guarded eyes, her arms folded across her chest, ready to step in at the first sign of hurt. She didn't stop him, but she didn't forgive him either. Nicholas didn't push. Instead, he showed up. Consistently, quietly. Every day he drove them to school when Amber was running late. He fixed the leaky faucet in her apartment without being asked. He helped with homework, fumbling awkwardly with crayons and multiplication tables, but never walking away. Little by little, walls began to fall. The children started calling his name more freely. The boy asked him about his favorite games. The girl began climbing onto his lap with picture books, demanding bedtime stories. Nicholas stumbled through the tales, his deep voice cracking on the silly parts. And Amber would watch from the doorway, torn between anger and something dangerously close to hope. One night, exhaustion caught up with them all. After a long day, both children fell asleep on the couch, their small hands clutching Nicholas's sleeves. Amber entered quietly, a blanket in her hands, and froze at the sight before her. Nicholas, the man who once walked away without looking back, now sat utterly still, afraid to move, afraid to break the trust those tiny hands represented. For the first time in years, his face wasn't the mask of a CEO. It was raw, vulnerable, a man who knew what it meant to lose, who would give everything not to lose again. Amber's throat tightened. She laid the blanket gently over the children, her hand brushing Nicholas's for the briefest moment. He looked up at her, eyes heavy with remorse, but burning with something else too, something that made her chest ache. A silent plea, a promise. "I can't change the night I walked away," Nicholas whispered, his voice barely audible. "But I swear to you, Amber, I'll spend every day of my life proving I'll never walk away again." Amber didn't answer right away. Her walls were still there, high and strong, but for the first time, she didn't turn away. She simply stood there, staring at the man who was no longer just the ruthless millionaire CEO the world admired, but the father her children needed. And maybe, just maybe, the man she had once loved. Sometimes the strongest men aren't the ones in boardrooms or on magazine covers. They're the ones who admit their mistakes and fight for the people who matter most. Nicholas Carter thought he had everything: wealth, success, power, but nothing compared to the day he heard a little voice call him daddy. This story is about regret, second chances, and the kind of love money can't buy. If you've ever believed in fate, in forgiveness, or in the power of family, this story will touch your heart. Don't just watch, feel every emotion, every tear, every moment of hope. Subscribe now for more heartwarming Millionaire CEO love stories filled with twists, pain, and unforgettable reunions. Because sometimes, walking away isn't the end. It's only the beginning.